Our bodies produce oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, anandamide, OSEA, etc., neurotransmitters, feel-good chemicals, the production of which is automatic but more evidently induced by 1. Stimuli through our senses. 2. The ingestion of beverages, food, medicine, narcotics. 3. Physical activity. 4. Remembering, OSEA, inducing experiences and by extension, anticipation of re-experiencing them. 5. Concepts. The most effective inducers of OSEA are other humans because we have intimate knowledge of a multitude of methods of inducing OSEA, thus can induce the greatest amount compared to members of other species. We are dependent on these neurotransmitters to 1. Feel good, and/or 2. Stave off bad feelings and/or depression. Henceforth, I will frame this as enhancing and/or regulating mental health. Given that individual members of our species can induce great amounts of OSEA in our bodies, it follows that we can have our OSEA induced by the concept of our species with respect to its achievements, betterment, continuation, etc. The function of our OSEA inducers is to enhance and/or regulate our mental health. Every appeal to or justification, OSEA inducer, for procreation points to this underlying biological justification. This is all about the existent enhancing and/or regulating their mental health, and they can do this without making their children feel pain and suffer and die, by fostering, adopting, focusing on career, hobbies, charity work, activism, being part of a group whose lifestyle and mental health isn't typically contingent on procreation, the child-free, homosexual, antinatalist communities, narcotic and/or antidepressant use, etc. There are plenty of substitute and/or alternative OSEA inducers that one can use to enhance and/or regulate one's mental health, making procreation unnecessary. If enhancing and/or regulating one's mental health is moral justification for making, or a reason to consider it amoral to make, innocent people unnecessarily feel pain and suffer and die via procreation, it seems it is moral justification for every act, or a reason to consider every act amoral, that makes innocent people unnecessarily feel pain or suffer or die. You like life so much that you're impelled to make other people feel its positive effects by creating them, regardless of the negative consequences. You want to make other innocent people unnecessarily feel pain and suffer and die to enhance your mental health. I like LSD so much that I'm impelled to make other people feel its positive effects by spiking them with it, regardless of the negative consequences. I want to make other people unnecessarily feel pain or suffer or die to enhance my mental health. I'm prepared to accept that procreation is moral or amoral when you're prepared to accept that spiking people with LSD is moral or amoral. If you're prepared to bite this bullet, then I have no issue with you procreating and you have no issue with me spiking your baby's formula with LSD. Every act is moral or amoral. Or, on the assumption that you're morally sensible and you don't consider yourself an antinatalist, I think the principles you apply to existing people makes you an antinatalist. Principle 1. Consent. What unnecessary act are we morally justified in taking, without consent, that makes an existing innocent person feel pain and suffer and die? If there is no justification to do this to existing people, there is no justification to do this to potential people because in both cases, the consequences are the same. An existing person is made to feel pain and suffer and die. But the non-existent can't give consent. A drunken, passed-out person can't give consent either. Does that mean a rapist is free to do without it? No. If you can't get consent, don't do it. Principle 2. Compassion. Treat people how you want to be treated. Or, treat people how they want to be treated. Either way, this typically involves not making innocent people unnecessarily feel pain and suffer and die. Again, this extends to potential people because the consequences are the same. An existing innocent person is made to feel pain and suffer and die. Yes, procreation isn't just making innocent people unnecessarily feel pain and suffer and die, insert positives here. What positives can you add to an unnecessary act that, without consent, makes an existing innocent person feel pain and suffer and die, such that it becomes morally justified. I don't know of an unnecessary act pertaining to existing people that can be morally justified because of the positives but also makes an innocent person unnecessarily, without consent, feel pain and suffer and die, and I don't think there's a good reason not to apply these principles to the potential existent because the consequences are the same. Given that there is no morally justified act that makes existing innocent people unnecessarily, without consent, feel pain and suffer and die, and given that procreation is an unnecessary act that makes existing innocent people, without consent, feel pain and suffer and die, and given that we typically consider acts that make existing innocent people unnecessarily, without consent, feel pain and suffer and die immoral, then procreation is immoral. If you apply one or more of the aforementioned principles to existing people, you can't be neutral or amoral about procreation. You're an antinatalist. No. Perhaps you think that procreation is necessary because your mental health will suffer greatly if you refrain. You need to make other innocent people necessarily, without consent, feel pain and suffer and die to regulate your mental health. In which case, it seems we're back to square one. I think that spiking people with LSD is necessary because my mental health will suffer greatly if I refrain. I need to make other innocent people necessarily, without consent, feel pain or suffer or die to regulate my mental health. Objections. In my experience, the degree to which someone is reliant on the concept and/or act of procreation to enhance and/or regulate their mental health correlates with the degree of the, sometimes reality-denying or delusional, mental gymnastics they'll perform to restore and/or protect their source of OSEA when it's threatened, which is why I'm inclined to find analogous the scenario of natalists who've been exposed to the idea of the deprivation of offspring to the scenario of heroin addicts or the antidepressant reliant who've been exposed to the idea of the deprivation of heroin or antidepressants. As such, objections to my perspective tend to be an exercise in making the interlocutor feel better. They will cite proposed benefit after benefit of procreation in a seeming scramble to inject themselves with or induce within themselves a hit of OSEA to ease or end their discomfort. The function of our OSEA induces is to enhance and/or regulate our mental health. Every feelings-based pronatalist objection, OSEA inducer, of antinatalism points to this underlying biological justification for procreation. This is all about the existent enhancing and/or regulating their mental health. And you know the rest. Feelings-based pronatalist objections of antinatalism are ironically evidence for my perspective. You're proving my point. One of my interlocutors went so far as to deny that he'd benefit by procreating. He believed that it would be exclusively for the benefit of others. This is biologically impossible. To be motivated to do something typically signifies that the brain's reward system is active, the result of the inducement of OSEA, caused by him evoking and/or expressing his benefits of procreation. His biology betrays him. The very fact that he's motivated to procreate is evidence that he's benefiting from the concept and/or act of procreating. Evidence which is reinforced by the fact that he'd be rearing his children and benefiting from OSEA-inducing interactions with them. This was like a heroin addict shooting up in front of me, insisting he wasn't high. I appreciate that you might have your heart set on starting a biological family and you would be at great pains to refrain. But suffering helps you grow. Suffering builds character. You can't appreciate joy without the suffering of not procreating.